Synonyms: ayena with the body, manasa with the mind, buddhya with the intelligence, kevalaihi purified, indriyaihi with the senses, api even, yoginaha Krishna conscious persons, karma actions, kurvanti they perform, sangam attachment, tyaktva giving up, atma of the self, shuddhaye for the purpose of purification. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: the yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. Translation with repetition: the yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. Purport: when one acts in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the senses of Krishna, any action, whether of body, mind, intelligence, or even the senses, is purified of material contamination. There are no material reactions resulting from the activities of a Krishna conscious person. Therefore, purified activities, which are generally called sadachara, can be easily performed by acting in Krishna consciousness. Sri Rupa Goswami, in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.187, describes this as follows: Ihayasya hareرداسye karmana manasa gira nikilasvapi avasthasu jivan muktasa uchyate. A person acting in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, in the service of Krishna, with his body, mind, intelligence, and words, is a liberated person even within this material world, although he may be engaged in many so called material activities. He has no false ego, for he does not believe that he is this material body or that he possesses the body. He knows that he is not this body and that this body does not belong to him. He himself belongs to Krishna, and the body too belongs to Krishna. When he applies everything produced of the body, mind, intelligence, words, life, wealth, etc., whatever he may have within his possession, to Krishna's service, he is at once dovetailed with Krishna. He is one with Krishna and is devoid of the false ego that leads one to believe that he is a body, etc. This is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. Thus once ends the wonderful transcendental purport. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we are studying the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and we have seen previously that there are 4 sections in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The first section, which is comprising of the first 12 verses, verse 1 to 12, can be grouped together as having the theme of how to stay in the world. So the section is called Stay in the World. Then the next section, which comprises of 4 verses, 13 to 16, This is called three doers. And then third section is called equal vision. And the fourth section, having just one verse, is called peace. So the acronym for the fifth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, if you want to remember the sections, the acronym for these sections is called Stay in the World. Sorry, STEP, STEP. That is the acronym. So we have seen in the past how this acronym can be easily remembered as being the opposite, more or less opposite of the acronym for the fourth chapter, which is PAST, past. Past, step. More or less, not exactly opposite, but sounds very much. If you remember past, you can reverse that and you can get step. So what is this stay in the world? If you look at it, the last several verses, starting from beginning of fifth chapter, they all belong to this section. And today is the 11th verse, so we are almost at the end of this section. Just one more verse in the next class tomorrow, or maybe next Saturday. Tomorrow there is a wonderful Jagannath Ratha Yatra. All of those who are in Massachusetts, please do plan to attend tomorrow evening. Jagannath Ratha Yatra, you might have seen the posters. So tomorrow evening we will not have this class. So we will continue this next Saturday. Will be the last verse in the first section, Stay in the World. And after that, we'll go to the next section called Three Doers. So what is this section, Stay in the World, all about? It is talking about how renunciation of work and renunciation in work are both valid paths to liberation. But of the two, renunciation in work is superior. So how to be renounced in work? It means we have to continue to work. And this work is done by staying in the world, by being engaged in our duties, occupational duties, as well as remaining renounced. So how is it that one can be remaining in our occupational duty as well as remain renounced? So for this, the gold standard, what are the symptoms of a person who has achieved that? All of that has been described in the last several verses, particularly in the last verse. We saw how one should remain like a lotus leaf, Padmapatram Ivambhasa. How is it that the lotus leaf, Padmapatram, stays in the water and yet is not affected by that water? It does not get rotten because of being always present in water, nor does it get contaminated if the water is slightly dirty. Oftentimes we see that lotus blooms in marshy areas, in place which looks very dirty, muddy areas. But how much ever muddy the water may be, the lotus flower, the lotus leaf, the lotus plant remains untouched. It remains pure and it does not get contaminated by that. So this is the image that we should all carry, the image of a lotus flower in muddy waters. When we think about how is it that I should remain in this world and execute my duty. So we saw that in detail last week. So this week, today's verse, let us just look at this verse one more time. Kayena manasa buddhaya kevalair indriyairapi yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyaktvatma shuddhaye. So kayena manasa buddhaya. Kayena means body. Kaya is body. Manasa, the mind. And buddhaya, intelligence. With body, with the mind and the intelligence. So they are somehow involved. Let us see how they are involved. The next line says, Kevalair Indriyai Api. So Kevalai is a very, very interesting word. It's translated as purified. And we will see more in detail about this particular word in today's class. That will be the focus of today's class. Indriyai Api, even with the senses. So not just the body, mind and intelligence, but even with the purified senses, something happens. What happens? Yoginaha karma kurvanti. So those who are in Krishna consciousness, the yogis, what do? They perform activities. What kind of activities? These are activities that are performed with the ordinary body, with the material body. It is performed with the material body. With the mind, which is also material. Buddhya, material. But they are all purified. The senses. So they are all these, the body, mind, and intelligence have all been given to us. They're all part of this material world. And yet, how it is that when you act with purified body, mind, intelligence, and senses, then with detachment, abandoning attachment, how these can be used to act for Atma Shuddhaye, for the purpose of purification, how it is that they do. So this is what we will see today. And the verse itself is saying that the people who are in Krishna consciousness, this is how they act. So those who are in the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness, they simply act for self-purification, even though they're already purified, even though they are yogis. So they're acting in Krishna consciousness. So when the word yogi is used, it must be understood that they're persons in Krishna consciousness. So they are already in Krishna consciousness, and yet they act for the sake of self-purification, even though they're already purified, but still they act for self-purification, as to set an example for us so that the ordinary people may follow. Because already we have seen in the previous verse, Padmapatram Ivam Bhasa. So the person in Krishna consciousness has already been shown as being untouched by contamination of the surrounding areas. So he's already a perfect person. That's what is being described. So how does this person act? Does he simply stay still, not performing any activity? Does a person in Krishna consciousness completely renounce all work and just stay still? No, he does not do that. So today's verse is saying that even though a person, first of all, remains uncontaminated, but it must be known that such a person acts with their body, mind, intelligence, even with their senses. Even with their senses. But how do they act? They have abandoned all attachment and they act for self-purification. So in this, there are many important points mentioned in the purport. Let us just take a look at the purport. I have broadly divided this into three parts. The first part, Prabhupada is saying, when one acts in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the senses of Krishna, any action, whether of body, mind, intelligence, or even the senses, is purified of material contamination. So when one is acting in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the senses of Krishna, it's a very curious word. You'll think, why is it saying satisfaction of the senses of Krishna? Because could have simply said satisfaction of Krishna. And we already know that there is no distinction between Krishna and his senses. Krishna and his senses, Krishna and any of his body part, they are non-different. Brahma Samhita, what is that? Angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti pashyanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti. Ananda chinmaya sadujjvala vigrahasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So, Angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti. With one part of his body, one of his angas, Krishna can perform the activity of any anga. So we can eat with our mouth, but Krishna can eat with his eyes. Simply by glancing over the food that we have offered with love and devotion, Krishna accepts, he sees the food, and by his glance, he is eating the food. Of course, sometimes he also eats with his mouth. Does not mean that Krishna's mouth cannot be used for eating. Does not mean that. There are innumerable instances when Krishna actually eats with his mouth in front of his pure devotees. And but then here, satisfaction of Krishna has been specifically coined because Krishna has transcendental senses. We should not think that Krishna is not a person, that he does not have a form, that he does not have senses, because this is a very prevalent notion in the world. Many philosophers calling themselves advanced transcendentalists have this notion that Krishna is not a person. He's simply some light or a concept or a force, or the entire universe together is Krishna, and that is all. It is just not really anything specific, any person. So Krishna actually has senses. They are transcendental senses. They are not corrupt material senses like our senses. They are transcendental senses. And he enjoys his senses. Why not? They are his senses. He can enjoy his senses. So when one acts for the satisfaction of Krishna's senses, any action, whether it be of body, mind, intelligence, or even our senses. So if our senses particularly, Rishikena, Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So when we use our body, mind, and senses in the service for the satisfaction of Krishna's senses, then that is pure devotion. And that such an activity is purified of material contamination. There is no material contamination in that. So the activity becomes purified. Otherwise, if we use our senses, it must be understood that they are materially contaminated, because our senses are contaminated. We are conditioned to think that we are the body, and we are conditioned to think that I'm acting for my enjoyment. That is the contamination. The root cause of contamination is that I'm acting for my enjoyment. The moment we act for our enjoyment, such activity is contaminated activity. And the moment we act for Krishna's enjoyment, that activity becomes purified of material contamination. This is the first point. Then Prabhupada goes on to say, there are no material reactions resulting from the activities of a Krishna conscious person. Therefore, purified activities, which are generally called sadachara, can be easily performed by acting in Krishna consciousness. And then he quotes this wonderful verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, written by Sri Rupa Goswami. And the verse is, Iha yasya harer dasye karmana manasa gira nikhilasva api avasthasu jivan muktasa uchyate. So a person who is acting exactly the same principle which is given here in this verse, and what is also given in the first point, is supported by this verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami. So what is this verse saying? A person acting in Krishna consciousness. So what is it? Again, that there is a paraphrasing of that. Acting in Krishna consciousness means acting in service of Krishna. With his body, mind, intelligence, and words, is a liberated person, Jivan Mukta. Even within this material world, although he may be engaged in many so-called material activities. So you may see that devotees of the Lord are engaged in activities that appear to be ordinary activities. They may be engaged in cooking. You may see they're engaged in eating. They are engaged in going outside in what appears to be fundraising. So they are collecting money, very much like any ordinary person. We are all collecting money for our sustenance, ordinary householders. We are engaged in activities for our own sustenance by endeavoring to raise the money. We work and then we get some money. With that money, we buy some grains and then we cook and then we eat. And it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness is similarly doing that. They're asking people to donate money, so they're raising money. Sometimes it may be seen that they are even selling something. You will see that in many temples there are activities that involve what appears to be ordinary business. Selling agarbatti, selling various puja, arati items, shankha, arati plate, bells. With all these things, some donations come to the temple. And it appears that the temple is now engaging in business activities. So it's very commonly seen that people say, oh, nowadays everything is so commercialized. Everybody is just raising money, just after money. Look at the temple, it's just a business. But that is very superficial understanding. There's a world of difference between two people who are acting in a particular way. What appears to be material activities, but one is in Krishna consciousness and other is not. And for an ordinary person, there may not be any difference. It may not appear that there is a difference. Because it's very easy for somebody to put on the dress or a costume of a holy man and go about doing materialistic activities in material consciousness. But the person's dress may appear to be a devotee. Whereas another person, his dress may be materialistic. He may be wearing jeans, he may be wearing pant. You don't know what he's doing, why he's doing it. But that person may be in Krishna consciousness and he may be doing activities to please the Lord. And ordinary people, we cannot make out the difference. But it's very important to know that just by seeing somebody's activity, one should not conclude that this is a materialistic activity. Rupa Goswami has described this at length in many places, in many different verses. And this particular verse, he's using the highest description of Jivan Mukta, liberated, completely liberated, liberated from what? When you say liberated, what is the meaning of liberated? Anybody would like to say online? What is your understanding of liberated person?
The person who are always engaged in the service of Krishna and spiritual master by his activity, by his words, by his thinking, by his by 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 cooking, by doing anything that is for Krishna only.
Such a person becomes liberated. But my
Yes.
question is, what is the meaning of the word liberated? Like, I'm just asking a very specific question. This liberated means what? Liberated from what? What is the liberation talking about?
Free from the foundation, material foundation.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
Uh,
Krishna.
uh, yeah, liberated from the false ego and the attachments of the material world.
Liberated from attachment. That's what Jitendra Prabhu was
Attachment and false ego.
attachment and false ego. Very nice. Liberated. You said liberated from bondage, Jitendra Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
What is this bondage? What kind of bondage are we talking about here?
Bondage means if we are doing karma, and means the karma is doing without involving Krishna, so that is called karma, and there will be some like good reactions, or sometimes it will be the bad reactions. So that is actually binding us to be into this material world. So if we involve Krishna, and if we completely surrender to Krishna, and if we completely surrender the fruits of our work to the Lord, then that particular so-called karma is not uh, not actually karma. That is become like free from the contamination of the material engagement.
Okay. Yes. So if you're acting in Krishna consciousness, that is what you have already explained. So if you're acting in material consciousness, then there is. I didn't quite get it. Can you repeat that?
Yes. So if we are doing anything without without remembering Krishna, or without involving Krishna into the center, then that is actually that will be either the good karma or be the bad karma.
Okay. So what?
So there will be some like reactions.
Okay.
So
Therefore,
and therefore this we will be actually bounded into either into the good karma, or either into
bonded
the
into
bad
the
karma.
reactions. Bondage of
Yes.
the reactions of our activities. Yes. So Chinmay Prabhu, what were you saying about attachment? You said something about attachment. Can you elaborate that?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So attachments is nothing but what we can say. We have attachments with the material, like we have relatives.
Material attachments. So you should say, when you say attachment, you should say material attachment, because attachment to Krishna is a good thing. So you can be attached to Krishna also, correct? So
Yeah,
just say attachment.
To Krishna is nothing but it's a freedom, attachment to the Krishna. Attachment to material world means we are getting trapped again.
Yes. So when you're saying, whenever you say that liberation means liberation from attachment, if you're going to say like that, then you should say liberation from material attachment.
Material attachment, right?
Material attachment. That way it is complete sentence. If you
Right.
just say liberation from attachment, it is incomplete.
Right.
You should say material attachment.
Attachments comes from false ego. So the liberation
Material
from
attachment. Material attachment comes from false.
comes from the false ego. So liberation from false ego is nothing but
Bodily conception of life. So you're saying that liberation means liberated from the bodily conception of life. That's very good. Very nice. So one very easy way to remember a direct meaning of liberation. Liberation means, let us say somebody has bound you with ropes. Correct? Let's imagine that somebody has bound you with ropes and you want to free yourself. So think of this image whenever you hear the word liberation. So liberation from bondage, think about rope, because you are bound by ropes. And in Sanskrit, the word for rope is guna. So when you are saying that we are liberated from bondage, it means we are liberated from the influence of three modes of material nature. It means we are above the influence of Rajoguna, Tamoguna, Sattva guna. We have crossed the three gunas. We are no longer influenced by these three gunas. That is what liberated means. Normally, our activities on the material platform, they are all driven, they're all heavily influenced by one of these three gunas or a combination of these three gunas. All our activities, everything that you see in the material world is all happening in combination of the three gunas. And therefore, there are reactions to that. And but a liberated person, they are not influenced by the modes of these three modes of material nature. They are not influenced by gunas. That is why it's called liberated, because they are free from the ropes. Rope is guna. They're free from guna. Like this, very easy to remember this. Liberated, before liberation, a person is bound. Bound means rope. Rope is guna. Right? So this way you can remember. So going forward in this purport, one important thing in the second section is that even when you're, a lot of times people think that liberated means only at the time of death we can be liberated. That liberation means entering into the Golok Dham or Vaikuntha Dham or the spiritual planets. And in this planet Earth, in this material world, one cannot be liberated. Liberated means going home back to Godhead. So one should remember that when a person is in Vrindavan consciousness, is in connection with Krishna, that is yogi. A yogi in full Krishna consciousness is always in connection with Krishna. So where that person is there, he is in Vrindavan consciousness. At that point, he is in Goloka Vrindavan, even while being in this material world. So liberation and freedom from the effect of the modes of material nature can happen even when you are in this material world, in this body. So this third section gives further elaboration of such a person. He has no false ego, for he does not believe that he is the material body or that he possesses the material body. He knows that he is not this body and that this body does not belong to him. He himself belongs to Krishna and the body too belongs to Krishna. So everything, the body, mind, words, everything is not his. Even though he inhabits the body, but it's not his, it doesn't belong to him. And when he applies everything produced of the body, mind, intelligence, words, life, wealth, etc., whatever he may have within his possession to Krishna's service, he is at once dovetailed with Krishna. It is not a very complicated, long drawn out process. So as long as there is only one criteria here, when he applies everything, we should probably in our mind underline the word everything. So when everything that we have is understood to belong to Krishna and is utilized in service of Krishna, then he is at once dovetailed with Krishna. There's nothing further than that. That's all it is. It is simply using everything we have for Krishna. It's not it's not some esoteric concept that one has to, for thousands of years, one has to stand on one leg, do tapasya, standing in a forest. Not like that. It's very simple. We have our body, we have our mind. We are able to operate it like a machinery. This machinery belongs to Krishna, and therefore the machinery must be used for Krishna. That's as simple as that. So he is one with Krishna and is devoid of false ego that leads one to believe that he is the body, etc. This is a perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. So now the question becomes, how does one get to this perfectional stage? And the clue for that is there in today's verse itself. Kevalair indriyairapi and atma shuddhaye. So this self-purification as a purpose must guide all our activities. The satisfaction of Krishna results in self-purification. And of course, as a devotee, our goal is to satisfy Krishna. But we should know that there are activities that contaminate us and there are activities that purify us. And we should be afraid of undertaking activities that contaminate us. There should be a fear of contamination. As a sadhaka, there must be a fear of contamination. If you are not afraid, like for example, there is a small child, the mother is taking the child to cross the road. The child Imagine if the child is not afraid of oncoming traffic. What will happen? Very happily, the child will leave the mother's hand and run here and there. And then imagine what is the danger that the child is going to be in. The fear of the oncoming traffic keeps the child in check, and the child holds on to the mother's hand tightly. And that helps the child cross the road safely. So we should understand our position as a sadhaka, as a neophyte, is like that child. We must be afraid of material contamination. There must be a concern that, oh, if I act like this, will this contaminate me? Yes, because I'm not doing it for Krishna's satisfaction. I'm doing it for my satisfaction. And immediately the cause and effect, oh, my satisfaction, that means I'm doing this under the modes of influence of the modes of material nature. And those are like ropes, guna. They are like ropes. They bind me, and I'll be forced to take birth and suffer again and again, life after life. So this purpose of self-purification should be very, very prominent, and the fear of non-self-purification, that is material contamination, that fear should be very prominent. So both the awareness of the need for self-purification as well as the fear of contamination, they are both present in us. We will go straight and apply this law, apply the principle of Kevalair Indriyarapi, purified senses. So we'll act for the purification. Now this word Kevalai, this is a very interesting word, and different variations of this word, they appear at many places. In Bhagavad Gita also, there's a place where it comes, other than this. And in Bhagavatam, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, multiple places there are references to this word. I would like to take you to a particular scene in Bhagavatam and explain how this word Kevalai is used, a slightly modified form of this word, similar meaning, purification. So, as Maharaj Parikshit was hearing Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami, there was a point in the 6th canto where Maharaj Parikshit asks Shukadeva Goswami. And this is how the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam begins, the first chapter of 6th canto. So Parikshit Maharaj asks Shukadeva Goswami that you have already described the path of liberation, Nivritti Marga, in the 2nd canto. And he says, Parikshit Maharaj says that by following that path, one is certainly elevated gradually to the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka, from which one is promoted to the spiritual world along with Lord Brahma. Thus, one's reputation of birth and death in the material world ceases. So this is the Karma Kanda section that Shukadeva Goswami has described in the 2nd chapter, by following which one can gradually be elevated to higher planetary systems. And then the highest planetary system where one can reach is Brahmaloka and or Satyaloka. So there, once the Satyaloka itself is destroyed, Lord Brahma, along with all the inhabitants of Satyaloka, they reach to the spiritual planets. So this is a process that has been described by Shukadeva Goswami in the 2nd canto. And then Parikshit Maharaj continues. He says that unless the living entity is freed from the infection of the material modes of nature, he receives different types of bodies in which to enjoy or suffer. And according to the body, he is understood to have various inclinations. By following these inclinations, he traverses the path called Pravritti Marga, by which one may be elevated to the heavenly planets, as you have already described, the 3rd canto. So actually the Pravritti Marga, the Karma Kanda, that is in the 3rd canto. The second canto is Nivritti Marga. That is not the path of material enjoyment. That is a path of austerity, which takes one to Brahmaloka. The path of that is called the Nivritti Marga. And the Pravritti Marga, or the path of enjoyment, as enjoined in the Karma Kanda section, that is described in the 3rd canto. And then Parikshit Maharaj says that you have also described the varieties of hellish lives that results from impious activities. And this is given in the 5th canto. And then he says, you have also described the first Manvantara, which was presided over by Swayambhuva Manu, the son of Lord Brahma, and that is in the 4th canto. So now, remember, we are in the 6th canto, and Parikshit Maharaj is kind of summarizing all the cantos that he has heard so far. 2nd canto, he heard Nivritti Marga. And then in the 3rd canto, he heard Pravritti Marga. And then in the 4th canto, he has heard about the first Manvantara, which was led by Swayambhuva Manu. And then in the 5th canto, he has heard about the varieties of hellish life that one undergoes by undertaking all impious activities. But now, what he's saying is that there is something missing. Parikshit Maharaj is saying something is missing. So let us see what he asks. So he's saying that this Supreme Lord, he has created this material world with varieties of universes, planetary systems, planets, stars, and so many oceans, mountains, rivers, trees, gardens, and all these different characteristics. And they're all divided among the various planets, including the planet Earth, among the higher planets and the lower planets. And the question is, can you please now tell me how human beings, particularly humans, the human species, the human people, may be saved from having to enter the hellish conditions, the hellish planets? So how do people in general be prevented from going to hellish planets? Because in hellish planets, there are terrible sufferings. So can you please explain this? Now Shukadeva Goswami gives a very interesting answer. He says, my dear king, if before one's next death, whatever impious activities one has performed in this life, with his mind, words, and body, if they are not counteracted through proper atonement, according to the description of the Manu Samhita and other Dharma Shastras, one will certainly enter the hellish planets after death and undergo terrible suffering, as I have previously described to you. So basically, Shukadeva Goswami is saying that one must go through proper atonement as per the Shastras. And Shukadeva Goswami continues, he says, therefore, before one's next death comes, so it's very clear there are many deaths coming, before one's next death comes, as long as one's body is strong enough, one should quickly adopt the process of atonement according to the Shastra. Otherwise, one's time will be lost and the reactions of his sins will increase. As an expert physician diagnoses and treats a disease according to its gravity, one should undergo atonement according to the severity of one's sins. So Shukadeva Goswami is basically telling Maharaj Parikshit that you must do prayaschittam. Prayaschittam. Atonement for one's sins must be done. And in fact, any Vedic ritual that is performed for as per the Karma Kanda, there is always a sankalpa in the beginning. And usually in sankalpa, there is a word that says prayaschittartam. Whatever activity you are performing, karishye, like this, there is a sankalpa that is taken. I'm doing this as atonement for all the sins that I have committed. So Shukadeva Goswami is saying that is very, very important. Now let us see how Parikshit Maharaj reacts to this. Parikshit Maharaj says, one may know that sinful activity is injurious for him because he actually sees that a criminal is punished by the government and rebuked by the people in general. Everybody knows. If you do something wrong, the police catches, right? You're jailed. Everybody knows this. But still, and even from the Shastras, everybody knows that if you commit a sin, you will go to hell or you'll suffer in hellish condition. This also we know. But in spite of this knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. Therefore, what is the value of such atonement? So even you can see that in Christianity, there is a concept of confession. Every Sunday, people go to the church, they go into a confession box, and then they confess to their sins. And then they immediately come outside the church. And what do? Start sinning again. They said, thou shalt not kill, but killing happens. So all kinds of sin. It's not just Christians. Everybody in every faith, materially minded persons, What we are doing is there is some amount of atonement that is done, some amount of repentance is there for our sinful activities, but we resume our sinful activities. So there is no value of such atonement, is what Maharaj Parikshit says. Then Shukadeva Goswami says, but before Shukadeva Goswami's answer, Parikshit Maharaj gives one more analogy, one more example. You can, it's often seen that an elephant, how an elephant takes bath. So elephant goes into the water and greatly enjoys sporting activities in the water, nicely takes bath in the water. And for many hours, an elephant can be seen enjoying in the water. And then when elephant comes outside the water, what does it do? It will take mud, dry sand, dry mud from the floor and spray it on its body. All over its body, it will fully spray the dust. So this is called Kunjara Shauchavat. Kunjara Shauchavat. And Maharaj Parikshit says that sometimes one who is very alert so as to not commit sinful acts is victimized by sinful life again. I therefore consider this process of repeated sinning and atoning to be useless. It is like the bathing of an elephant, for an elephant cleanses itself by taking a full bath, but then throws dust over its head and body as soon as it returns to the land. So there's no point of this kind of a elephant bathing. Kunjara Shauchavat. What's the use of this? So then Shukadeva Goswami replies. He says, Karmana karma nirharo nahi atyantika ishyate avidvad adhikaritvat avidvad adhikaritvat prayaschittam vimarshanam. So he says that, my dear king, since acts meant to neutralize impious actions are also fruitive, they will not release one from the tendency to act fruitively. So definitely prayaschitta is good for cancelling the sin that you have already committed, but it won't prevent you from committing future sin. Correct? Because the tendency to act fruitively is not gone. So now Shukadeva Goswami is giving another explanation. The persons who subject themselves to the rules and regulations of atonement are not at all intelligent. Indeed, they are in the mode of darkness. Unless one is freed from the mode of ignorance, trying to counteract one action through another action is useless, because this will not uproot one's desires. Thus, even though one may superficially seem to be pious, he will undoubtedly be prone to act impiously. So simply by following these rules and regulations of atonement, there's no use. Therefore, real atonement is enlightenment in perfect knowledge, Vedanta, by which one understands the supreme absolute truth. So first, Shukadeva Goswami gave an answer to test Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit passed the first phase of the test by saying that I reject this atonement process because it's very obvious that just because I've committed a sin and I've done atonement does not mean I'll commit more sin. So how do I prevent this root cause of desire to sin? This propensity for sinning, how do I stop? And Shukadeva Goswami is going one step ahead and is now talking about speculative knowledge, Vedanta. Learn the Vedanta, enlightenment of knowledge through imperfect knowledge. But then he sees the reaction of Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj is not satisfied. Shukadeva Goswami further continues. He says, okay, if a diseased person eats the pure, uncontaminated food prescribed by a physician, then he is gradually cured, and the infection of a disease can no longer touch him. Similarly, if one follows the regulative principles of knowledge, he gradually progresses towards liberation from material contamination. One is gradually purified if one cultivates knowledge, even through mental speculation, and strictly follows the regulative principles. So this Prabhupada is explaining this. He's giving further explanation to Shukadeva Goswami's answer. That yes, it is in fact true that because as part of the path of knowledge, Sankhya, one must follow strict regulative principles. It's a path of renunciation. So by following the path of renunciation, definitely there is a knowledge that develops, and in that process, you get purified. It's a slow process, but one gets gradually purified, and the propensity to commit sin diminishes significantly. But on the platform of jnana, one is saved from hellish life, although one is still not completely free from infection. So even though one is saved from hellish life, but in future, it does not future-proof you. The difficulty is that on the platform of jnana, one thinks that he has been liberated and he has become Narayana. This is a common fallacy of a Jnani. Jnani thinks, I am liberated. Bhakta thinks, I am always conditioned. See the difference between a devotee's attitude and a Jnani's attitude. A Bhakta is always afraid of material contamination and he considers himself to be always vulnerable. And he is always seeking the protection of the Lord because he is never thinking that now I have become a good devotee or a pure devotee. He never thinks like that. Whereas a Jnani, he thinks that now I have become liberated and I have become Narayana. I have become equal to Bhagavan. And what happens to such people? That is given in Bhagavatam. Ye anye arvindaksha vimukta maninas tvai astabhavat avishuddha buddhaya aruhya krichena param padam tata patanti ado anadhrita yushmad angrayaha. So, although a person may go to higher planetary systems, but or even to the Brahma Jyoti, he may even get merged with Brahma Jyoti outside of the material existence, but because his propensity to enjoy has not fully gone away, because he is missing the interaction with the Supreme Lord, because the spirit soul is fundamentally seeking action in Krishna consciousness. But in absence of the activity in Krishna consciousness, the soul starts to hanker for material activity, material enjoyment, and therefore falls down. Even having achieved the highest position, Paramapadam Tataha, Patanti Ado Anadhrita Yusmat Angrayaha. So this is the fallacy in the Jnana Marga. So, so Sukadeva Goswami then continues, he says, to concentrate the mind, one must observe a life of celibacy and not fall down. One must undergo the austerity of voluntarily giving up sense enjoyment. One must then control the mind and senses, give charity, be truthful, clean, non-violent, follow the regulative principles, and regularly chant the holy name of the Lord. Thus, a sober and faithful person who knows the religious principles is temporarily purified of all sins performed with his body, words, and mind. These sins are like the dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree, which may be burned by fire, although their roots remain to grow at the first opportunity. So, here Shukadeva Goswami is continuing with the Jnana Marga, where he is talking about the austerity, importance of austerity. And Prabhupada is further explaining the importance of these austerities for a devotee also, and how there are different gradations of the kind of breaking of regulative principles, different categories. And a brahmachari, a good brahmachari, a perfect brahmachari, will stay away from all the different 8 types of breaking of regulative principles, particularly with respect to illicit sex, which involves not thinking about a woman, not being close to a woman, not making a determination to have sexual activity. Like this, there are different categories, and a good brahmachari, a perfect brahmachari, never allows himself to be put into such situation where these can happen. But then, in the Bhakti Marga, on the path of devotional service, there is a much easier process, which is to purify one's senses by starting with the tongue. Sevon ukhe jihvado swayameva spuratyadaha. So, whereas for a jnani or person endeavoring for perfection through the path of knowledge or analytical speculation, these restrictions of senses must be endeavored for artificially through artificial sense control. But for a devotee, because they're dovetailing their senses, starting with the tongue in service of the Lord, therefore, this is a much easier process. And Shukadeva Goswami, while he's talking about these austerities, he is also mentioning the importance of chanting of the holy name. So he says, one must follow the regulative principles and regularly chant the holy name of the Lord. And thus, by seeing that Parikshit Maharaj has not been satisfied with his answers, Shukadeva Goswami then gives him the complete answer of how a person can actually be saved from the hellish condition. And that is by regularly chanting the holy name and performing devotional service. So in the explanation of this particular verse, Prabhupada gives wonderful explanation, a very detailed explanation of how a devotee remains restrained in his senses as while executing devotional service. And Prabhupada quotes the verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, where it is said, Yuktahara viharasya, yukta chetasya karmasu, yukta swapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkhaha. He who is temperate in his habits of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation can mitigate all the material pains by practicing the yoga system. So, also there is another verse in Bhagavad Gita, Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama apayino anityas tam satikshasva bharata. So one who is able to tolerate the different conditions, material conditions, he is called a dhira. So a dhira is able to control his senses and be tolerant of the ups and downs, the dualities in material life. So these are the characteristics of a devotee. So these are all described in the purport by Prabhupada, where Sukadeva Goswami says this. And then Sukadeva Goswami says this one very wonderful verse. He says, Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayanaha agam dhunvanti karsneya niharam iva bhaskaraha. When there is the whole night has passed in darkness, and we are all struggling to find light. Then somebody may have a torchlight, somebody may have a room light, somebody may have a bigger floodlights in a stadium. But you can see that even when there is a big day-night match and a cricket match, and there is a stadium with some 20 floodlights all over, huge, massive floodlights, still somebody will get out, and then the commentator will say, oh, he lost sight of the ball, could not see the ball in the darkness. The day-night match, he could not see the ball clearly. So they try experiment with pink ball, white ball, red ball, all those things, right? So whatever amount of light you may have, at night time, seeing is always difficult. But as soon as the first ray of sun breaks through on the eastern horizon, immediately all the fog is lifted and one can see clearly. Just one ray of sun, immediate. As soon as the sun rises, the fog dissipates. All the entire horizon is lit up and we can see clearly. So, Niharam iva bhaskaraha. So, Sukadeva Goswami gives this example to say that a rare person, only a kechit means rarely, sometimes, kevalaya bhaktya, complete, unalloyed devotion service to Krishna, Vasudeva Parayana. Such a person can uproot the weeds, agham dhunvanti karsneya, completely uproot the weeds of sinful reactions with no possibility that they will revive. And he can do this, how? Simply by discharging devotional service. Simply by discharging devotional service. So very, very powerful verse. Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayanaha agham dhunvanti karsneya niharam eva bhaskaraha. Dhunvanti is to completely destroy. It also can be used, vidhunoti is to clean, cleanse. So purification. So destruction of one's propensity to commit sinful activities is the same as acting for purification. So this propensity for acting in sinful ways, how is that removed? It is by Vasudeva Parayanaha. But this is not easy. It is rare. Kechit kevalaya bhaktya. Only rare persons achieve this. So Sukadeva Goswami, in the previously what I had talked about, he had given an example of bamboo tree. A bamboo forest, you can say. A group of bamboo trees have been planted, and let us say that they have dried up. And now you want to get rid of the bamboo plantation and put something else. Of course, many places we consider bamboo to be very decorative and nice. But if for an agriculturalist, he wants to plant rice, if bamboo has grown, it is a weed. He has to get rid of bamboo. So let us say that bamboo has become dried up and you want to burn it up. So you may burn up the bamboo, but what is observed is a few months later again bamboo comes. Why it is coming? Because underneath the soil there are roots. These roots don't go away. So the bamboo is burnt, but the roots are not burnt. Because the roots are not burnt, therefore the bamboo comes back. So because the bamboo comes back, it can be understood that roots remained. But by executing devotional service, completely these are uprooted. So there is another verse that is quoted by Prabhupada in this connection with respect to the rarity or rareness of this achievement of this condition. Manusranam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tattvataha. So the person who attains this kind of a level of kevalaya bhaktya, it is rare. And it's not easy. So amongst many persons, hardly one may endeavor for such perfection. And out of many people that endeavor for that perfection, hardly anyone achieves perfection. And out of those who have attained perfection, hardly anyone knows me in truth, Krishna says. But so this is the highest knowledge, which is to render devotional service. But people who do not understand this, they think that they are liberated, they are following some either the karma kanda or jnana kanda. The highest case, they might observe strict austerities, but then they end up thinking that I am Narayana. But then the purity of bhakti, pure devotional service, kevalaya bhaktya, that is described by Rupa Goswami, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, as anyabhilashita shunyam yana karmadi anavritam anukulyena krishna anusilam bhaktir uttama. So the uttama bhakti or pure devotee is devoid of a desire for of jnana or karma. Jnana karmadi anavritam. So without any desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation, one should render loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. That is called pure devotional service. Now, what happens is that for those who do not take up this pure devotional service, those who are not devotees or not even interested in devotional life, what happens to them? They are bondage. They are in bondage because some activities that are performed, they always have a reaction. So these reactions, they are in different categories. We have seen in previous, also we have discussed how the reactions to our activities can be in category of prarabdha or aprarabdha, and how these are further subdivided, bija, palonmukha, like that. There are many different classification of different kinds of reactions that come for our activities. And if somebody is suffering from prarabdha karma, that means it's a current. The reactions from the past sinful activities are all current, and we can see that how we are all suffering in different ways, and they are all because of our past activities, which is now fully fructified, and now we are suffering that. But it is said that when one takes to devotional service, all these different phases of sinful life, including prarabdha, kuta, bija, aprarabdha, everything completely vanished, completely vanquished. No sign of it. And this is explained by Krishna to Uddhava in the 11th canto. Yathagni shushamridharchihi karoti edhamsi bhasmasat tatha mad vishaya bhaktir uddhavainamshi kritsnasaha. My dear Uddhava, devotional service in relationship with me is like a blazing fire that can burn to ashes all the fuel of sinful activities supplied to it. So no matter what is the quantity of sin being committed before, when one takes to devotional service, all of that, regardless of what stage that karma is in, it's all vanquished. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It's completely vanquished. And there is another statement in Padma Purana that Prabhupada quotes in this connection. In Padma Purana, there is a statement that persons whose hearts are always attached to the devotional service of Lord Vishnu are immediately released from all the reactions to sinful life. These reactions generally exist in 4 phases. Some of them are ready to produce results immediately. Some of them are in the form of seeds. Some are unmanifested and some are current. All such reactions are immediately nullified by the devotional service. When devotional service is present in one's heart, the desires to perform sinful activities have no place. So the whole sinful life is actually happening because of our forgetfulness of Krishna. So when one is fully in Krishna consciousness, then automatically there is no meaning, there is no place for the desire to commit sinful activities. And then with respect to this place of atonement or the propensity to commit sin, Jiva Goswami gives one very nice explanation for this. And it's a very, very powerful explanation. Let us see what Jiva Goswami says. Jiva Goswami says, as far as atonement is concerned, if one has caught even a glimpse of devotional service, all the needs to undergo prayaschitta, atonement, are superseded. So let us see what are these different types of devotional service. So Jiva Goswami is talking about slight glimpse of devotional service. Let me show you certain categorization of devotional service that Jiva Goswami has given. So Jiva Goswami says bhakti can be classified in two categories. One is called santata bhakti and the other is called kada chitki bhakti. Kada chitki. Santata bhakti and kada chitki bhakti. This santata bhakti can be further subdivided into two categories. One is bhakti with some slight attachment, mostly free of attachment. Slight attachment may be remaining. And the other is spontaneous loving devotional service. Santata bhakti of category spontaneous loving devotional service. Then this kada chitki bhakti, this has got three categories. First one is raga bhasa mayi. Raga bhasa mayi. Raga bhasa mayi. Here one is almost fully attached. There is hardly any detachment, but still some devotional service is being rendered. Then there's a next stage, which is called Raga Bhasha Shunya Swarupa Bhuta. Raga Bhasha Shunya Swarupa Bhuta. In this stage, there is no spontaneous love, but one likes the constitutional position of service. So it's not like a person is spontaneously loving Krishna, but this constitutional position of service is being enjoyed. So therefore, there's a liking for that. And then, even below that, there is a stage called Abhasa Rupa. Abhasa Rupa. So this Abhasa Rupa is a slight glimpse of devotional service. That's all. Just slight glimpse. So hardly any devotional service being done. Just a slight glimpse of devotional service. So Jiva Goswami says that amongst all these different bhakti, this Abhasa Rupa is the lowest form. Just a slight glimpse of devotional service has been obtained. And then, but he says that this slight glimpse of devotional service is so powerful. Even the slightest glimpse, that just with that slightest glimpse, all the needs to undergo prayaschitta or atonement are completely superseded. No more there is a need for any atonement. So Jiva Goswami says, therefore, atonement is certainly unnecessary when one has achieved spontaneous love, of course. But above that, attachment with love, which are signs for increasing advancement in kada chitki, even in the stage of abhasa rupa bhakti, all the reactions of sinful life are uprooted and vanquished. The word karsneya means that even if one has a desire to commit sinful actions, the roots of the desire are vanquished merely by abhasa rupa bhakti. And then he again quotes that sun example, how just one ray of sun is sufficient to completely dispel all the fog and all the darkness. So devotional service is so powerful that a slight glimpse of abhasa rupa bhakti, slight glimpse of devotional service can actually completely eliminate for you to do any separate atonement. So anybody who has taken to Krishna consciousness and has obtained a slightest glimpse of devotional service, where they could relish the devotional service one time, when out of their heart, they truly want to please Krishna. If you have glimpsed once, then one should be very confident that we don't have to undertake any other prayaschitta or atonement. Such a person, there is another very important verse in Bhagavad Gita. Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha bhajanti ananya manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam. That is, the Mahatmas, those who advance further, not just those who are in initial slight devotional service stage, but once you advance and reach Mahatma stage, such persons are completely under Daivi Prakriti. So there is no question of being under the modes of material nature. They're fully liberated, of course. But even a person who has got the slightest glimpse of devotional service, such a person also does not have to undertake any separate atonement. Abhasha Rupa is not required. And of course, there is a story of Ajamila, how Ajamila was such a sinful person, who was originally a pure, simple Brahmana, but under the influence of illusion, he fell for a prostitute, and then he gave up his young, beautiful wife, and children. He gave up their company. He asked him to get out, and then he started living with this prostitute, and then he had several children from her and started committing all kinds of abominable activities and broke all sorts of regulative principles. But then, at the time of his death, when the Yamadutas came to take him, the Vishnudutas immediately arrived there and stopped the Yamadutas from taking Ajamila. And they gave some wonderful explanations. And there are several verses given by the Vishnudutas to explain why Ajamila should not be taken to Yamaloka. He is not sinful. They said all his sins have been cleared, although he has sinned so much, but no matter what the quantity of his sin he has performed, simply by chanting the holy name Narayana once and offenselessly, even though he did not chant it purely with a pure heart, he didn't chant, but he chanted without offense, and therefore he is now pure and eligible for liberation. And not just that at the time of death he chanted Narayana. He had his son, and his last son, youngest son, he named him as Narayana. And he was very much attached to that son. So whenever he was going to eat, he will call, Narayana, come here, eat with me. And let us say he was going to do some work, Narayana, come here, let us do this together. So he was so much attached to his son Narayana that wherever he went, whatever he did, he kept on saying Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. And this chanting of the holy names purified him gradually. And at the time of his death, he was completely purified. The Vishnudutas say that the chanting of the holy name of Lord Vishnu is the best process for atonement for a thief of gold or other valuables, for a drunkard, for one who always betrays a friend or a relative, for one who kills a Brahmana, or one who indulges in sex with the wife of his guru or another superior. It's the best method of atonement for one who murders women, the king or his father, for one who slaughters cows, and all other sinful men. So we fall under all other sinful men for sure. In the end, there is a catch-all, all other sinful men. You simply chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. So this chanting is so powerful. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is this verse which is quoted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with regards to the importance of this holy name. And that verse we all know, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalau Nasti Eva, Nasti Eva, Nasti Eva Gatir Anyatha. So in this verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calls out that Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam. This has been said 3 times for emphasis. And then Kalau nasti eva, nasti eva, nasti eva gatiranyatha. In the age of Kali, there is no other way, no other way, no other way. This has also been said 3 times for emphasis. But even more than all of this is the word kevalam. Kevalam. And this kevalam means this is the only way. Harer nama, harer nama, harer nama eva kevalam. It's an exclusive way. There is no other way to do it, and the exclusivity of this is given by the word kevalam. So that is the importance of that word. So this must be remembered. So along with the chanting of the holy names, one must, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, how should enter this devotional service? Because acting for purification means that one must chant the holy names. That is the most powerful way of purification. But along with this most powerful way of purification, for it to be effective, one must be humbler than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that this particular verse, Trinadapi Sunichena Taror Iva Sahishtuna Amani Namanadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. So this must be worn as an ornament around one's neck. It is so important that this must be worn as an ornament around our neck. So in summary, today's verse, Kayena Manasa Buddhaya Kevalairapi in Kevalair Indriyairapi Yogina Karma Kurvanti Sangam Tyaktvatma Shuddhaye. So the aspiring sadhaka should act with mind, body, intelligence, with everything that we possess, should act for the purpose of purification. This purpose of purification, actually, it is given in Bhagavatam, can only happen when we surrender to a pure devotee. Only by surrendering to a pure devotee and acting under the instructions of the pure devotee, purification business starts. Until then, there is no purification. So that's a very important aspect of purification, is to serve the mission of a pure devotee. So in service of a pure devotee, when we chant the holy names and we act for the pleasure of Krishna, that is the process of self-purification. So with that, I'll stop and see if you have any questions or comments. Any questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, no questions, I request you all to come on the camera. So all those who are in Massachusetts, please remember, tomorrow there is a wonderful Ratha Yatra festival in Legacy Farms North in Hopkinton. The festivities start at 4:30? 4 p.m. 4 p.m. at Legacy Farms North. I request all of you, whoever is local, to kindly come for this program. It will be a wonderful, wonderful event. We have a lot of devotees have spent considerable effort, energy in constructing a wonderful Ratha. Last year and the year before, this is the 3rd year that we are conducting Ratha Yatra. It's just a absolutely phenomenal and enjoyable occasion, joyous occasion, that we get the opportunity to take Lord Jagannath on a joy ride, and the Lord enjoys it very much. If you need any directions, you can always call me, or you can post a message in the group. Somebody will see it, will respond. So please raise your hands and repeat after me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare,
Krishna Krishna Hare
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Rama Hare Hare.
श्री श्री जगन्नाथ रथ यात्रा महामहोत्सव की,
Jai.
ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की, जगत गुरु शीला प्रभुपाद की, ताई गौर प्रेमानंदे।
Hare Bol.
हरि बोल।
हरि बोल।